What's up? Daily Data Podcast show, whatever the hell you want to call it. Tuesday, March 12th, Warriors get right. And I'm looking at this. The Niners are getting smoked. They're just getting absolutely smoked in free agency. I know that we're supposed to be patient. I know that there's a lot of moves that can be made, and there are still dominoes to fall, this and that. I'm looking at what the Niners have already done. I'm looking at what they need to do, and I'm having a very hard time seeing how any of this can be considered successful. And given the high hopes, if everything is expectations reality, given the high hopes that I think myself and a lot of others had for the 49ers going into this free agency period, it only exacerbates the disappointment that I'm generally feeling. Like this team, as of today, and nothing matters until Labor Day, but it's a long time. But as of today, this team looks appreciably worse than it was last season. They still got to do the NFL draft. They still have free agents they're going to sign. But if what we've seen so far is sort of their big moves, if this is the stuff that is supposed to make them better, I don't know how this makes them better. I don't like the Leonard Floyd signing. The more I look into it, the more I dislike it. He's a name. He was great for the Bears. He was great for the Rams that one year. And yes, Brandon Staley knows him, so he comes in. And by the way, it should be noted, Brandon Staley is not the defensive coordinator of this team. He might be the de facto defensive coordinator of this team. He might be the assistant defensive coordinator of this team. He might be something, but he is not the defensive coordinator. He was not hired for that job. He was hired to be an assistant coach. Nick Sorensen is the defensive coordinator of this team. So it should be Nick Sorensen's call on kind of who goes where and what. If this was somebody who was brought in specifically so that he could help out with Brandon Staley terminology and things like that, then we might have a shadow government going. We'll find out in due time if that's what's actually happening with the 49ers defensive core. But they signed Leonard Floyd. I think a lot of people liked this signing based on Leonard Floyd's deserved reputation. He's 31 years old. I hate pretending that that's old, but it's old, at least in terms of NFL defensive ends of a non-elite category. And Leonard Floyd has not been an elite player since his second year with the Bears. So it's been a minute. I mean, the whole world has changed pretty irrevocably since Leonard Floyd was an elite player at defensive end. Last year, he played for the Buffalo Bills. The note that I would like to add with the Buffalo Bills aspect of things is the Buffalo Bills had no pass rush last year. They employed Von Miller, they had Greg Rousseau, and they employed Leonard Floyd. And Leonard Floyd had some numbers that he put up early in the year. In the last 8 games, Leonard Floyd had 1 sack, and it was against the Miami Dolphins. And if you really need to know if Leonard Floyd is going to be an impact player for the San Francisco 49ers, just look at the fact, look at how the Buffalo Bills used him last year. He was a rotational pass rusher, and he wasn't getting any pass rush late in the year. Now, that's what's going to happen when you have an older player. We saw it firsthand with the 49ers with Javon Hargrave. Like, guys get beat up in the first 8 weeks of the season, and if you're an older player, you probably don't have any juice left for the last half of the season, much less the playoffs. The Buffalo Bills went up against the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs. An exceptional game. I've watched it a couple of times now. I didn't note Leonard Floyd at all against the 2 worst tackles in the NFL. Not the worst tackle pairing. The 2 worst tackles in the NFL, in my opinion, is what the Kansas City Chiefs had last year. Shows how good their quarterback is. Against the 2 worst tackles in the NFL, Leonard Floyd was a no-show, was persona non grata. He went Andrew Wiggins in the spring on us. We'll talk Warriors a little bit later. Andrew Wiggins had a nice game last night. Good for him. A very, very positive development for the Warriors, who needed a big third quarter to beat the San Antonio Spurs. But they had Victor Wembanyama, and that's who I really want to talk about in a little bit. Regardless, Leonard Floyd as some sort of every down option opposite Nick Bosa, as some sort of stalwart that you can count on, I don't see it. I straight up do not see it. Now, could it happen? Could he come in healthy? Could the new system change things? Absolutely. There are caveats to all of this. If we're pretending like I can see the future, why the hell am I doing this? But I'd like to think that I got a pretty good read on things. And I'd like to think that I can evaluate a little bit of talent. You don't have to be in an NFL front office to be able to pick out who can and cannot play. In fact, you probably shouldn't be, because a lot of these teams don't know what the hell they're doing. I know the Niners know what they're doing, and I do want to provide some deference here, but I don't see it. I don't see it. I need them to show me the wisdom. I need them to show me the light, because if Leonard Floyd is going to be anything for this team, and by the way, when you're paying the guy $10 million, he better be something. He better be something. When he's your first free agent signing, he better be something. If Leonard Floyd's going to be anything for this team, I don't know what it is, because I don't want him as a situational pass rusher, a third down guy who comes in and makes things happen, because he doesn't make things happen. And I don't want him to be a first and second down guy, because as much as I have read all these positive things about his run defense, I don't see it. I just don't see it. I don't think he's a bad player. I don't. I think he's fine. I think he's forgettable. And maybe that's all the 49ers really want. But man, I just don't get it with Leonard Floyd. I don't get it at all. Codmus 3 coming in, asking, it's because Brandon Staley wanted him. Kyle is crushing on Staley. Buddy, I'm crushing on Staley. I was first through the wall on Brandon Staley. Brandon Staley should not be making personnel decisions. Brandon Staley is not the defensive coordinator of this team. If Kyle's crushing on Staley so much, he should have made him the goddamn defensive coordinator. I would have had no problem with that. I thought he would have been the best hire for the job. And if that's the case, then I can give deference to Brandon Staley in that role. But that's not the role he has. He's an assistant coach on this team. This is Nick Sorensen's defense. And while Nick Sorensen's never coordinated anything, and is a first-time play caller, and he's coming, like, I get why Brandon Staley's around, but Brandon Staley is number 2 in the hierarchy. And they're not running Brandon Staley's 3-4 defense, though I would note they might have to, because they only have 3 defensive linemen. So they might turn into a 3-man front just because they don't have a second defensive tackle to play next to Javon Hargrave, who, by the way, would be a terrible one technique. Regardless, like, if this is all a Brandon Staley move, if you used your big gun on a Brandon Staley move, that is a mistake. That's a mistake. And I don't blame Brandon Staley. You want a guy and they'll do it for you, do it. You know, you don't look gift horse in the mouth. But that's a mistake by Kyle and John if they're only doing this for Brandon Staley, because I don't think there's any juice left. I don't think there's any gas left in the tank with Leonard Floyd. I think at best he can be forgettable. And I think he's going to have a hard time living up to the contract. I hope I'm wrong, because I'd like to see the 49ers be successful. I'd like to see them win games. I'd like for this team to not waste a golden opportunity to win a Super Bowl. You got a quarterback making less than 0.5% of your salary cap. The best thing you can have is Patrick Mahomes. The second best thing you can have is a cheap-ass Brock Purdy. And if this team is going to win a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy as its quarterback, I would do it when Brock Purdy is really, really cheap. And that means you can throw money around willy-nilly. Now, so can every other team, apparently. Inflation is rampant in the NFL. But man, I do not see it with Leonard Floyd. And I'm not gonna lie to you here. I gotta come clean. I don't know a damn thing about Yetur Gross-Matos. I mean, I remember watching him coming out of the draft. I thought that he was an athlete who didn't really know how to play defensive end. I imagine he's gotten better at playing defensive end, but I imagine the athleticism has dipped a little bit because he's been playing professional tackle football for the last couple of years. If he's a situational third down pass rusher, I can buy it. The problem is you just paid him as much as you paid Leonard Floyd. So conceptually, the only way I can see this being logical, as opposed to getting a Danielle Hunter for 20-something million a year, and instead going with Leonard Floyd at $10 million and then Yetur Gross-Matos at $9 million, is those two guys turn into one guy. You have Floyd as a first and second down guy, and then you have Yetur Gross-Matos coming in as a third down situational pass rusher, a la D Ford and so many others. I can buy that logic. I can't buy the output. I'm not bullish on that combination, especially when you could just get a 3-down player like Danielle Hunter, who's going to be better on first and second down against the rush and is going to be better against as a pass rusher, though Matos does have the athletic ability. I think they overpaid for both of these guys. I'm not optimistic that these guys are going to provide value for the San Francisco 49ers in a serious way. And by the way, like, I don't know if I would have invested my money if I only have a limited amount of it. I wouldn't have invested necessarily in defensive end. I would have gone out and gotten myself a damn defensive tackle to play next to Javon Hargrave. And when you look at the holes on this defense, I mean, the three moves the Niners have made so far: Gross Matos, $9 million a year; Leonard Floyd, $10 million a year; and then they re-signed George Odom for $5 million a year. You know, you're paying a special team safety $5 million a year. Clearly, inflation is out of control in the NFL. Regardless, they overpaid for all of these guys, all three of them. And I know everyone's getting overpaid everywhere. Don't get me wrong, but oh boy, this is. They need to make a splash. They need to make a move that shows a little bit of deftness here, because right now, if I'm trying to pick up emotions in all of this, it feels like they're panicking. It feels like plan A and plan B didn't work. So they went to plan C, and plan C was throw some money at Brandon Staley's guy. Plan C was throw some money at one of your scouts' favorite players a couple of years ago, and just make sure we have George Odom, because I don't want to mess up special teams, because I never want to think about it again if you're Kyle Shanahan. Listen, Cotimus coming in here. I appreciate the comments here. Like, they will sign guys for a defensive coordinator. Like, yes, Isaiah Oliver last year was Steve Wilks' guy, and that was a bad signing. Now, Steve Wilks did have positive things, like he banged the table for Jair Brown, and that was a great draft pick. Now, here's the difference. Steve Wilks was the defensive coordinator. Steve Wilks was in charge of the defense. Brandon Staley, maybe we're finding out about the shadow government right here, right now. I'm going to venture to say that Staley made his case, and no one really did anything to stop him. No one did anything and said, yeah, we actually don't think that's a good idea, and you're an assistant defensive coach, so we appreciate your input. Keep throwing it our way, but we're not going to do that. And so either what happened was Staley, and I am in agreement that Staley, and I'll ask some folks around 4949 over the next 48 hours or so. How's that for numbers? How do I get 47 in there? Regardless, we're 50. I do think Staley wanted this guy. It makes sense. He knows him. He trusts him. They won a Super Bowl. All good. Good stuff. Did they win a Super Bowl? No. Maybe. I don't know. Regardless. Oh, no, yeah, they did. They won a Super Bowl together. So I do think that he wanted to bring in Leonard Floyd. That is a fair inference, given all we know about Staley, given all we know about Leonard Floyd and their history together. It's a fair inference. That doesn't mean you actually have to do it. And if Leonard Floyd is the kind of guy, if you're going to use your big gun on a guy that your assistant coach says I'd like, is he really an assistant coach? Or is he actually the shadow defensive coordinator? I want to throw this thought out there, because this is the only bit of optimism that I can maintain. Because again, it feels as if the 49ers are panicking and they're overpaying, and they're just kind of getting worked in the free agent market right now. I think they didn't expect, because for all the conversations that I had, I never came away with the expectation personally that inflation was going to be running like this, that everyone was going to be throwing money around like this. It was kind of a stupid lack of foresight on my end. It was also a stupid lack of foresight on the 49ers end, if indeed I got the comprehensive understanding from my conversations there. It feels like they're getting worked. It feels like they're overpaying, just trying to get anybody who will come. It's kind of San Francisco Giants-y. But I maintain optimism on this front. You look at the holes that they have. They need to get a weak side linebacker to at least hold down the fort while Dre Greenlaw is out. I don't think that's something that you have to spend big money on. I think you could be shrewd there. They need a goddamn defensive tackle to start. Maybe you can handle that in the draft. Last time they went around doing that thing, trying to get a starting defensive tackle from the NFL draft, they got Javon Kinlaw, and that didn't work out. They didn't pick up his fifth-year option, and he's now a New York Jet on a very limited deal. It got so bad yesterday that I thought maybe they should have re-signed Javon Kinlaw. It's still so bad that I'm definitely thinking they should have re-signed Javon Kinlaw. And I think Javon Kinlaw is not a good football player. He's a defensive end in a defensive tackle's body, and there ain't no room for tweeners on a four-man defensive front. Case in point, Eric Armstead. By the way, Armstead coming back, I'm not totally ruling it out. It would take a long time, but I'm not sure Armstead has a market. I haven't heard of any Armstead market. Maybe I'll be proven incorrect in the next 10 minutes or so, maybe in the next couple of days. Hell, we got until June. We'll find out. But bringing Armstead back doesn't feel like the worst option at this juncture. Maybe Eric Armstead's rethinking that whole pay cut thing that the 49ers asked him to do. My optimism is this. They also need to grab a cornerback. They also need to get someone to start opposite of Mooney Ward at corner. Because I think Lenoir with Kenny Moore, a guy that Jake and I talked about on the 49ers Game Day podcast yesterday, a guy I talked about on this stream yesterday, Kenny Moore looks like he's going back to the Colts. In fact, I can send a text here and get that confirmed or not. Kenny Moore looks like he's going back to the Colts. I thought Kenny Moore was going to be a good option for them, at least as somebody a tantalizing option, maybe not a tantalizing option, because then you slide Lenoir outside, you got Moore on the inside, Lenoir and Moore, it's a whole fun thing. And Lenoir, Moore, and Ward, that would have been a hell of a trio. Regardless, Moore, who I think is one of the finest slot corners, oxymoron, slot nickelbacks. Ugh, there's no good name for it. One of the best nickelbacks in the NFL. I would have really liked that move. I think it's a tantalizing concept. It's not going to happen. That's fine. It was probably a little bit too galaxy brain to begin with. Lenoir is better in the slot. He's a damn good player in the slot. You could do a hell of a lot worse than Lenoir in the slot. I want him near the ball. I want that aggression manifesting on the field, especially if you're going to be a stronger cover 3 team, which again, who the hell knows? I don't know who's coordinating this defense anymore. We didn't know anything about Nick Sorensen, and now we know even less. So they still need to get a corner. They still have money to spend. And the corner market has not really developed at all over the last 48 hours, 72 hours, however long you want to pretend as if this legal tampering period and the illegal tampering period has existed. And there's 2 names that I want to throw your way. Well, I guess 3. Kendall Fuller, cornerback out of Washington, coming off a down year, but a hell of a corner, and I think would really fit in to a cover 3 system. You have Xavier Howard, who Miami is going to cut tomorrow. Xavier Howard is probably going to have a nice market, but I think the 49ers can get in on that market. And Stephon Gilmore. I don't believe Stephon Gilmore has signed anywhere. And that would be a really nice pickup if the 49ers can do that. Now you have your corners handled in a cover 3 system. You better have that. Better have your corners handled. And now you feel a little bit better because, okay, you got Lenoir in the slot. That's going to help out your linebackers. That's going to help out your safeties. And it might even help out your pass rush a little bit, depending on how aggressive they want to be. Now, they still need to get a defensive tackle. I love Sweat. Not as a concept, though I do have a sauna, which I love, and I do love sweating. But I like the Devondre Sweat out of Texas. I think he is just a hog molly, really fun to watch. It's been the most fun that I've had so far breaking down film, and I love finding day 3 dudes, but like I've just loved watching. I loved watching him in the Big 12. I loved watching him at Texas, and I've loved watching all of his tape over the last couple of weeks as I've been looking at defensive tackles, which I always thought was going to be a legitimate first-round option with all the problems that they have and all the holes they need to fill. I thought defensive tackle was a viable first-round option, and I think now it might even be a necessary first-round pick. It's not a bad draft to do that in. It really isn't. I think Sweat could be a really fun option. But now, again, we're going into a season where the 49ers have Super Bowl expectations, and I think their defense is appreciably worse. And even if you get Sweat, somebody that I really like and really think can make an impact immediately at the NFL level, you're counting on a rookie to hold down your entire damn run defense. Yeah, Fred Warner's behind you, but you don't have Dre Greenlaw, at least to start the season. You might never have the Dre Greenlaw that we know and love again. Javon Hargrave is not someone who's going to stop the run. He is a pass rushing defensive tackle. And a lot of the problems the 49ers had last year was that Armstead is not a run-stopping defensive tackle. He's a pass rusher too. And he was asked to play a role that he couldn't reasonably fulfill. And so they were just porous up the middle. Didn't help that Steve Wilkes also decided to use Fred Warner as if he was a free safety. But there were a lot of issues, and they still got to the damn Super Bowl. So it's not as if they're having to deal with a dearth of talent. But this team is less talented defensively than it was last year. And I don't think 11 draft picks is going to change that. I think that these 11 draft picks initially, conceptually, what I envisioned them doing was creating a second wave, creating a bunch of reliable players in a year, 2 or 3, that when Brock Purdy ended up getting paid, and it's going to be like $40 million if Brock Purdy is the Brock Purdy we saw last year. If Brock Purdy gets paid, now you have to actually make some cuts. And the contracts that the 49ers have set up put them in a position to do that. They've handled the cap pretty damn well. But you need to have young, cheap guys, even for a year or two, to come in and fill some of those holes. And you wait a year or two, you develop them, you get them in with your coaches, whoever the hell those guys are anymore, because they keep losing. They lose coaches more than they lose players. And then you have some guys who can come in and bolster the ranks. Now it seems that they need to bolster this year's team. If they don't go out and get a number one corner, if they don't go out and get a defensive tackle, by the way, let me know. Let me know who the good defensive tackles remaining are, because everybody looks like they've gotten taken. I'm just going to go through the list here. Christian Wilkins got 4 years and $110 million. So the market was completely screwed. Leonard Williams resigns with Seattle. I never liked that fit anyway. Who do we have? DJ Reader is still out there. I like DJ Reader. That would be a really good option. I think he could fulfill the role. And listen, by the way, you're only looking for a first and a second down guy. You can go to a speed rush on third down, but you need someone to anchor your run defense up the middle. DJ Reader could absolutely do that. He's still out there. He's coming off an injury. I'd like to see that. There's another name. It's escaping me right now. I'm going to find it, and then I'm going to act like an idiot. Grover Stewart re-signed with the Colts. He's that kind of grizzly bear. Sheldon Rankins is a viable option. Now, he has pass rush juice, according to ESPN. I'm just reading that verbatim. I think he'd be fine. I'm not the biggest Sheldon Rankins guy. Who was the other damn player I wanted? Regardless, DJ Reader. DJ Jones is a name that's going to be thrown out a lot. I don't think DJ Jones has the juice, and frankly, I think that he's a redundancy to Javon Hargrave. If you want to have him as Javon Hargrave's backup, by all means. But they're built the same way. They play the same way. And while Jones was a good run stopper, that was when they had a front that was more equipped for run stop. It's just full. Like DJ Jones was getting run stops because he was blitzing, bursting into the backfield and making things happen, as opposed to being the grizzly bear that I think the 49ers really need, that they thought Eric Armstead could be, who just has wide arms and engulfs. It might not be a tackle for a loss, but it is not a tackle for a gain. He's just taking everybody. He's giving them the bear hug. The way that Trent Williams plays left tackle, where it doesn't actually make any sense, he just becomes the blob and absorbs whoever's coming. That's what they need in the middle of the defensive line. Maybe Sweat is that kind of guy. Maybe he can do that year one. Defensive tackles, year one, not typically effective, especially. Who would be the great example of this? Who was the guy that the Panthers took? Brown out of Auburn a couple of years back. It took him like 2-3 years to become the player that he became. And he ended up being a pretty good player. I thought it was a ridiculous draft pick at the time because he didn't have the athletic testing scores, but he eventually figured out how to engulf. He eventually figured out the sort of tactics and technique that he needed to be an effective run stopper. Not that the Carolina Panthers could really stop anything. Listen, I love Sweat. I think that's going to be a refrain on this show on 49ers Game Day on KMBR, which I'm doing 6 to 9 tonight. I like Sweat a lot. I don't think that you want to put a rookie defensive tackle in the middle of your defensive line and say, buddy, you're our run stopper. I just don't think that is a viable Super Bowl path for the San Francisco 49ers. And The Super Bowl path has to maintain a top 10, top 5 defense. It just has to. And I know defense isn't sticky, but this defense is appreciably worse. And maybe DJ Reader can come in and solidify it. He would be a better option than Sweat if we're talking about 2024. And we shouldn't be talking about anything but 2024 when we're talking about the San Francisco 49ers. So maybe DJ Reader. And if you bring in a corner, I can feel a lot better about the state of things. But right now, when you don't have that opposite corner and you don't have a starting defensive tackle and you're paying George Odom $5 million to play special teams and your other defensive ends is this amalgamation of hasn't done it yet and it's already done it and probably doesn't have any more to give, I'm a little bit concerned about the defense. Now, we should say that this does not matter for 6 months. All that matters is the team that you put on the field 6 months from now. So there's a lot of time to fix these problems. But as players are coming off the board, it's looking like the 49ers are getting worked. That's where I stand today. Hopefully I stand somewhere else in the short-term future. Let's talk Dubs. Beat the Spurs last night. Hooray, hurrah. Everybody's feeling good. 112-102. They played one good quarter of basketball. Thank goodness it was an outstanding quarter of basketball, but they played one good quarter of basketball. There are some real concerns about how this team is going to function without Steph Curry. I mean, a question I put on the screen here, can they beat the Mavs without Steph? That's going to be a big no from me, dog. I have some real issues, and we should get an update on Steph Curry today. We'll see if that optimism the Warriors were pushing out over the weekend was validated or not. Let's talk about somebody, though, who was outstanding last night, and I want to get in the praise now because I think it might go away. It might go away comes Wednesday against the Dallas Mavericks, who just throw center after center after center with you and are going to be running pick and roll every single damn play with Kyrie and Luka, especially Luka. Trayce Jackson-Davis had himself a incredible ball game last night. And my standard is always, I don't care what the box score says. I don't want to have to look at the box score to credit you for your performance. The final score is all that matters. Trayce Jackson-Davis unquestionably put in a winning performance, not just the dunk on Victor Wembanyama, if you can qualify it as a dunk. Awesome play, incredible play, stand up out of your seat play, even if you're at home watching with a toddler. But the defensive ability that he showed, the passing that he showed, the rim running that he had, 6 of 7 from the floor last night. I mean, 3 offensive rebounds, those were big. 10 boards overall, 5 assists. I mean, that was an outstanding performance from Trayce Jackson-Davis, who just keeps getting a little bit better the more that they play him. And matchups matter, but when you're going up against a 7'4" dude, I don't care how wispy he is. I don't care how tired he looks. He's 7'4", and he showed that to Trayce Jackson-Davis a couple of times. And then Trayce Jackson-Davis threw it right back in his face. This guy, I'm gonna say it on the record now. I've been holding this for a minute. Trayce Jackson-Davis is reminiscent of Kevon Looney. He's got some Looney in him with way more athleticism. He's smart, he's positionally sound, and he can leap. And that was the finest game of his pro career last night. He was the best, well, second best, because Wembanyama was incredible. He was the second best rookie on the floor. And by the way, Brandon Pajemski, looking healthy last night, showed how big of an issue that ankle injury, I think, was. He was magnificent as well. Another guy that I never want to check. I don't want to check the box score with any of these guys. Brandon Pajemski, you could tell me that he had 2 points. You could tell me he had 20 points. I know, having watched that game, he was a factor. I wanted to see the same thing from Andrew Wiggins last night. I think we did. I'm always going to want a little more, but he played with force. He made himself known. I thought he played smart, effective, efficient, and forceful basketball last night. It had to happen. It had to happen. The Warriors cannot win without Andrew Wiggins, especially when Steph Curry's not in. But even with Steph Curry in, we have now reached the spring. We got the sun setting at 7 p.m. here in the Bay Area. We're getting the full 12 hours. Like, it is spring, and that means it's time for wings. And that means that the Warriors' best wing, and it's not Jonathan Kuminga yet, it will be in due time, but not this season. And Kuminga had a nice game last night. Andrew Wiggins is their number one wing. He was the second best player on a title team, and he needs to start coming through night in, night out. And last night he did. Were there some concerns overall about the Warriors' performance? You bet your ass there were. 112 to 102 against the Spurs, and it required a big third quarter. But they got the win. They moved forward. They play the Mavericks on Wednesday. That is a absolutely huge game in the standings. Absolutely huge game because right now the Warriors are in the 10 seed at 34 and 30. They're one game back of the Lakers. The Mavericks won 3 in a row now. They had, they're very up. They're very down. I like the way they're playing. I mean, it's not my personal brand of basketball, but it does seem as if they figured out how they can best play. The Mavericks, 37 and 28. I mean, you have to steal that game if you want to get out of the 10 spot. If you want to get out of the 10 spot, you got to get games against dudes who are in that play-in tournament. And they got back-to-back games in that regard. So you get the Mavericks on Wednesday, and then you get the Lakers, I believe, on Saturday. Yes, indeed, at the Crypt or Staples Center, as I still call it. These are the two biggest games for the Warriors in a very long time. I don't know if Steph Curry's going to play in either of them. And frankly, while the Mavericks game is going to be a real issue, whether Steph Curry plays or not, and it's more unlikely than likely that he plays. Mavericks game is going to be a real issue in Dallas, but the Mavericks are so up and down, you can't really trust that they're just going to run. I mean, they'll be favored. I can't imagine they're going to run the Warriors off the floor. That's just not the way they go about their business. And maybe Steve Kerr actually puts in a great coaching performance and helps the Warriors out defensively there. Anytime the Warriors would like to stop dribble penetration, by the way, that'd be a really welcome addition to their defense. Last night, it was abysmal. They got away with it because the Spurs are generally an abysmal team. But you get the Mavericks and the Lakers back-to-back. I would love to say you got to win them both. I don't think that's a realistic possibility. But I'm fascinated to see how it goes down because these are two of the bigger games left on the calendar. This might be the biggest 2-game stretch remaining on the calendar until we get into April, and every game, no matter who you're playing, is very important. Can we mention Victor Wembanyama for a minute here? By the way, thank you for watching. If you're on X, if you're on YouTube, wherever, if you're on X, please subscribe on YouTube to the Dieter Kurtenbach channel. Then I'll just send it to you on YouTube. We're going to try to do this every day at noon, regardless. I have maintained for a while now that the NBA is in for a real pickle once Steph and LeBron retire, because there's no heir apparent that's American born. And everything that I know about how the NBA markets itself, who watches NBA games, how the NBA is conversed about, and how the media partners, Turner and ESPN, handle their business, you need American-born stars. We can be basketball dorks and love great players no matter where they are. The American casual public is not overtly xenophobic, but they want Americans. They want Americans. And I think it's one of the reasons why the NFL is going to keep winning and winning and winning. People know these guys. They're 99.9% American players. You got to watch them in college, having a little bit of an understanding, and then you get to watch them in the pros. And there's a narrative to guys that, hell, some people have known these guys since they were high school prospects because they care about college football. It's easy to latch on to folks who come through a system that you understand. Victor Wembanyama just shows up for 95% of people who are watching basketball. And it is fun, and it is interesting, and it is exciting. And if you love basketball, I'll use the word again, you're tantalized by the possibility of a Victor Wembanyama. But Victor Wembanyama can't be the face of the league. He can't be. And I just don't know who the next face of the league is. You got Nikola Jokic out here. He's going to win MVP again. As well he should. He's the best player in the league without a doubt. You can't market him. I know they're trying with Hotels.com right now. It ain't happening. He's not interested in it. He's Mike Trout at best, And by the way, this is an issue that has plagued baseball in recent years. I would argue the talent in baseball has never been better, but the superstar talent has never been less because the best player in baseball is Ronald Acuna. We don't know Ronald Acuna from when he was younger. The influx of international players, as wonderful as it is for the game itself and the globalization efforts of any sport that they're playing, does not relate immediately to the American English-speaking viewing public. It doesn't. And I don't think that's going to change. The NBA is going to run into the same issue that Major League Baseball ran into, which is they don't have marketable American stars. Watching the Warriors game last night, and I see a couple of different commercials with Jimmy Butler. Now, as a Chicago guy, somebody who loved watching Jimmy Butler when he was with the Bulls, loves watching Jimmy Butler now. Jimmy Butler is my guy. I love Jimmy Buckets. He's great. Jimmy Buckets is not a superstar. He isn't. Not by the media standard, not by the PR standards that we hold true superstars to. If I have to explain to my wife, my dad, the guy who's just, my wife's friend's husband who's just, if I have to explain to him who that person is, if you have to put in the ad who that person is, they have to say his name, like, oh, it's Jimmy Butler, not a superstar. You have to transcend all that stuff. But the fact that Jimmy Butler is getting cast again and again and again tells you where the NBA's problem is. Zion Williamson could be that guy. He's got the name. He's got the highlights. He could be that guy. He's not going to be that guy. I think at this point, we can just write off Zion Williamson as the next face of the NBA. Ja Morant could have been that guy. I say that in the past tense because that will never happen. The NBA draft the next couple of years does not provide these possibilities or opportunities because Chet Holmgren ain't going to be it. I had somebody suggest to me the other day when I brought up this topic, well, what about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? Canadian. So that's not going to work. I mean, maybe it will work on a trade deficit. Maybe you have to have a conversion rate there. I don't know what the Canadian dollar is to the US dollar right now, but you're losing something. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, handsome fella, could win MVP, plays in Oklahoma City. That doesn't help, but they've had superstars in Oklahoma City before. I do think that NBA can transcend stuff like that. Aaron Rodgers was a superstar in Green Bay, Wisconsin for 20 years. So I don't think that that is as big a factor as many people believe it to be if we're talking national stars. But I don't think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander can be the face of your league, Canadian. Steph Curry and LeBron James are the face of the league today. And maybe Jason Tatum can take a step forward this year. And I do think that there is an undercurrent of narrative that is being expressed on a day in, day out basis, which is begging the Boston Celtics to become that team so that Jason Tatum can become the next face of the NBA, the American-born face of the NBA. They're begging for it to happen. They're begging for it to happen. Keep that in the back of your head as you watch any ESPN or Turner talk show. They want the Celtics to win the title so goddamn bad so that the league in some ways can be saved. But as we get more and more international players and the quality of basketball is continuously raised, Luka Doncic, Victor Wembanyama, Nikola Jokic. I mean, you think about the best of the best. Giannis, the best of the best aren't coming from the U.S. right now. And there's no clear heir apparent to LeBron James or Steph Curry. And if one isn't developed in the next couple of years, we're going to have a big issue with the NBA and its marketability. And while I don't give a damn about the ratings, in terms of my enjoyment, and you might not either, I can tell you a lot of people who have a lot of money riding on this very much do. And the last thing they want to be is the next Major League Baseball. I loved watching Victor Wembanyama last night. If you get 25 pounds even on that guy, it's over. It's over. I mean that in like a Vince Carter 2000 dunk contest way. It's over. He is so damn good. He's out there getting pushed around and is dog tired for like everything beyond the first quarter. His body is just not ready to play in the NBA, and he's still giving dudes work. Now, Trace Jackson Davis gave him that work too, but he is giving dudes the business. What happens when he is not 18 years old anymore? What happens when he becomes a man? I mean, it could go the wrong way. I really hope it doesn't. This dude is a creative player. This is exactly how you would create a player if you were a kid and you were playing NBA 2K. 7'4", handles out of the gym, beautiful 3-point stroke, can block every shot, can play, put his back to the basket a little bit, can give you a little bit of post play. What happens when this dude puts on a little bit of weight? Doesn't even need to be Joel Embiid. I'm just talking like 270, 280 at 7'4". That's still pretty damn lanky. I don't know. I don't know how you would compete with that. Full stop. It might be over. He might break basketball because this is beyond Giannis. This is beyond Embiid. The possibilities here are limitless if this guy puts on a little bit of weight and develops an NBA body. And they got some time to figure that out in San Antonio. But if he's going to end up being that guy, then he's probably going to have to be the face of the league. And as smart and charming and interesting and positive, like you could do so, like it makes all the sense in the world that he should be the face of the league. He will be the best player. He can handle that sort of scrutiny. He's been handling it since he was like 14, 13 years old. And yet I just don't think it will resonate. I don't think it will resonate, and I think the NBA is a big issue there. But that's a larger conversation that we will have a million times between now and whenever those fateful days where LeBron and Steph Curry retire are, hopefully for both of them, just because I love watching basketball. Those are far, far, far away. For the Warriors, you better be hoping it's far, far, far away. In the immediate, we're going to get an update on Steph Curry today. We'll find out when he's back, hopefully. No guarantee that they give that sort of a date. They might just say, we'll do it again tomorrow. We'll do it again tomorrow. We'll do it again in 2 days. They can give as many updates as they want. There is no rules to that sort of a thing. But we'll find out if Steph Curry's going to play on Wednesday. We'll find that out today. And if he does, that's a very big deal for the Warriors because these are two very big games coming up with the Mavericks and then the Lakers on Wednesday and Saturday. And it's an opportunity for them to look at the situation that they just had, which looked pretty dire there on Saturday, and say, hey, we might have pulled this one off. We might have escaped. We might have escaped the worst on this one. So big ups to the Warriors for winning last night, getting right, beating a Spurs team that brought it. They brought it. They don't know how to bring it for a full 4, but they brought it for 3. And luckily the Warriors took advantage of that one in the 4th. Real quick before we get out of here, let's just make sure that nothing new has happened in NFL free agency. Yep, Colts Kenny Moore confirmed. That's from Schefter. Let's see if Dieter Kurtenbach can corroborate. Yep, I got him with the Colts. And then Gerald Everett, tight end. He's with the Bears now. Drew Lock 1 year with the Giants. Nothing. Shelby Harris re-signed with the Browns. The Browns have done a really nice job of locking up some of their defensive tackles. They didn't pay. They got Mo Hurst on a cheap deal. They get Shelby Harris, I presume, on another cheap deal. So good stuff from them. And Josh Uche, who was never going to be a possibility for the 49ers after they signed Leonard Floyd and Yetur Gross-Matos. He's going back to the Patriots. One thing I do want to talk about before we get out of here. Appreciate everyone who's joined us. And if you want to get in any questions or comments, feel free to do so now. Appreciate everyone who's done that so far. Cleve Farrell signed a 1-year deal with the Washington Commanders for $2.5 million. If the story of this free agency period for the 49ers has been missed opportunities, not grabbing Mac Jones for a 6th-round pick, not being able to throw the big money at the big time. Like, there's been a lot of missed opportunities here for the 49ers. And of course, you're going to miss a million opportunities. It's free agency. I get it. You're not going to get 100% hit rate. You'll be lucky if you get a 15% hit rate. But not bringing back Cleve Farrell, I think, is going to look really dumb. Really dumb. Not throwing an extra $1 million at Cleve Farrell to get him to sign another 1-year deal with the 49ers, I think is going to look pretty stupid. Because if I'm correct, which heaven forbid, but if I'm correct about Leonard Floyd and Gross-Matos, you're going to need somebody that you can trust to just set a damn edge on the opposite side. And Cleve Farrell was unspectacular, frankly forgettable, but not in the bad way. Somebody that played in Week 18 He was probably the best player that the Niners put out there reasonably in week 18. It turned out he got injured, and it turned out to be a big issue for the 49ers in the playoffs, in my opinion. To let solidity walk out the door at a position where you need solidity, because I don't think Leonard Floyd, as much as other people are saying this, I don't think he provides it. I think that's a mistake, especially when you're clearly paying for it with a guy like George Odom, who I think is a very good, fine player. He's not a $5 million a year player. He isn't. If he's a $5 million a year player, so is Cleve Farrell. And to let him walk out the door for nothing, he's not like he's going to get a comp pick or anything coming the other way next year. That's a missed opportunity for the 49ers. Again, optimism in this. Cornerback market is still wide open. The true cornerback market, not the nickelback market, because Kenny Moore is off the board. But the cornerback market is still wide open, and there are still some very good weak side linebackers that they could add on the cheap to a little bit more than cheap. The Dollar General, not just the Dollar Tree market for linebackers. So there are opportunities for the 49ers defense to get better with some of the money that they have. They do have a lot of draft picks. That helps. Maybe you package some of those together, get a guy. But I don't want to go into the season trusting a rookie at such a pivotal position like defensive tackle or really cornerback. Now, if you want to use him on a linebacker, if you want to use it as depth player, defensive end, whatever, that's great. But throwing that person into the fire as a rookie on a team that fancies itself, and we'll see if they are still this, but fancies itself a Super Bowl contender, that's a dangerous game. Niners still have some money to play with. I would recommend that they get to getting when it comes to that. Again, Stephon Gilmore, Xavier Howard, Kendall Fuller. Any of you three guys want to take some San Francisco money and come on down, you'd be very welcome on this team. Thanks, everybody, checking in. We'll do this again tomorrow, because why the hell not? Give you a little Warriors-Mavericks preview. Giants are playing the Dodgers today. Dodgers going with Tyler Glasnow. That's going to happen here in about 15, 20 minutes. So looking forward to watching that. I'm on KNBR tonight, 6 to 9 p.m. It's Sports Phone KNBR. Call in with any of your questions, comments, or criticisms. I got a mailbag up on the Mercury News website if you want to go read that. I answered a very good question, which was which Bay Area sports team gives you the most aggravation. And I went off the board a little bit here. Right now, it's the 49ers, but on the whole, San Jose Sharks. I mean, if I'm doing strict volume, it's the Warriors, right? Every minute, every day. They're an agitating team a lot of times. But if we're talking like general despair incurred, it's the San Jose Sharks. You can read about that on the Mercury News website. I'll have another column up for you tomorrow morning. Thanks, everybody, for checking in. If you're not already, subscribe on YouTube. Please do that. And anytime this goes live, it'll give you a little notification. You can choose to watch it or not. But appreciate everyone who watched it here today, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.